Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the connection between consciousness, time, and reality, and how these ideas are tied to some of the most advanced research coming out of academia today. We'll look at how consciousness works as a part of the quantum field, and how time moves in cycles instead of a straight line, and why everything seems to be building towards some kind of a breaking point. We're also going to explore what it means if other countries have already figured this out, how it could affect the world we live in, and what each of us can do to stay aware as these shifts happen. So let's get into it! Consciousness interacts with the structure of matter, energy, and time as part of a unified system. Thought and reality shape each other through a field that grows and changes over time. The system follows cycles where consciousness builds to a point that forces transformation. Understanding how this works explains why time moves in loops, how collective thought steers events, and what happens when the cycle reaches its end. As a little foundation, let's discuss the quantum consciousness framework of time and reality. If you want more information on these things, go check out the Hypersphere Universe playlist. The universe functions as a four-dimensional hypersphere that rotates within a boundary known as the Higgs field. As the hypersphere moves, it generates the matter, energy, and classical physics that shape our physical existence that we know. The universe functions as a four-dimensional hypersphere that rotates within a boundary that I think is the Higgs field. Consciousness arises as a part of this system, acting as a quantum field that grows over time through experience. These fields of consciousness, or manifolds, persist beyond individual moments and continue to evolve. Time moves as a result of quantum coherence collapse. At each Planck scale moment, reality shifts into its next probable state, following patterns that branch into many possible outcomes. Consciousness participates in this process by shaping what outcomes become real. Observation and attention influence how these probabilities unfold, and over time, consciousness evolves in step with the changes it helps create. Each individual consciousness forms a unique manifold, made of personal experience and choice. As these individual manifolds interact, they create a larger collective field that holds the accumulated thought of everyone connected to it. This collective field grows in complexity and strength the more consciousness develops and interacts with it. The beliefs, choices, and actions held within this field shape the probabilities of what happens next, steering reality through collective thought. I also need to explain, one of the important concepts from some of the other videos is that everything is conscious or has consciousness since it's a fundamental field. So this is a very small process. I'm not trying to describe instantaneous manifestation or the law of attraction. It's not magic. It's just a fundamental field that helps bring together what we call consciousness. Like our brains are consciousness processors. So I keep talking about the loop. So what the fork is the loop? Simply, it's the cyclical evolution of consciousness and reality. As the collective field of consciousness grows, it moves through patterns that repeat over time. These patterns create cycles that shape both the structure of reality and the direction of consciousness itself. The universe does not move forward in a straight line. It moves in loops that carry both matter and consciousness through stages of growth, collapse, and renewal. These loops exist at different scales. Grand loops would mark the full cycle of the universe, from emergence to collapse and reformation. Smaller loops would follow the same pattern at the level of civilizations, species, and then individual lives. Even moment to moment, we're completing some form of a loop. Right now, I'm beginning a loop by making a video, and I'll be ending a loop when I post the video. These are small loops in the grand scheme of things. Each loop reflects a period where consciousness builds towards a limit that forces a change. Loops close through different triggers. When collective consciousness grows beyond a stable point, the shared field can fragment in a process called decoherence, breaking down common alignment leading to collapse. When the many potential futures that exist as probabilities begin to align into one path, the system forces a final shared reality, a convergence of outcomes. A consciousness As consciousness adds more complexity and information to the field, the system reaches a saturation point, no longer able to hold further growth without shifting into a new form. The boundary between existence and non-existence also sets limits that create natural points of reset when crossed. It looks kind of like a tesseract, and these ends of loop points are the points when the 4D is merging and crossing over to the 3D. Through these cycles, collective expectation also plays a central role. Throughout these cycles, collective expectation plays a central role. What people believe shapes what becomes probable. So prophecies act like fixed structures in the probability field, guiding events toward specific outcomes. And the more that we align our consciousness around an expected end or transformation, the more the system adjusts to meet that expectation, making the outcome even more likely, and making us even more likely to attribute that thing to the original expectation. Consciousness evolves inside each of these loops, gaining complexity and depth. As the collective field grows, it reaches a critical mass that the system can't contain without transforming. At that point, the loop closes. This can happen through a collapse, a reset, a step forward in a new phase of reality where the field begins a new cycle at a higher level. This can happen through collapse, reset, or a step into a new phase of reality where the field begins a new cycle at a higher level. In various mythological and religious traditions, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Greek, and Norse mythology, just to name a few, the concept of collective blindness or disillusionment occurs before or during tumultuous times. For example, there is Isaiah 6, 9 through 10. Go and tell this people, keep on hearing but do not understand, keep on seeing but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and return and be healed. And there's Surah Al-Baqarah 2:7, which says, Allah has set a seal upon their hearts and upon their hearing, and over their vision is a veil, and for them is a great punishment. There's also the concept of Maya, the veil of illusion that keeps beings from seeing as reality as it is. The classical use of 8 in the Iliad, where Agamemnon is described as being struck by 8, a form of divine-induced madness that clouds your judgment, and a plethora more examples of this happening prior to a judgment, prophecy fulfillment, disorder and chaos, and so on. As each loop moves forward towards its final stage, the strain on the collective consciousness field becomes more visible. The buildup of complexity and the approach of transformation affect individuals and societies in ways that reveal where the coherence is strong and where it is falling apart. Not everyone can move through this process with awareness. As the loop nears closure, many individuals lose coherence. Some stall in their development, some fragment under the pressure, and others disconnect from reality. It becomes a form of blindness, where people can't see or act with the changing field. Spiritual traditions describe this as the hardening of hearts or the loss of vision. The breakdown of coherence creates a functional disconnection from the flow of consciousness that is guiding the next stage of evolution. Ancient prophecies describe this process as a moment when people will see without perceiving and hear without understanding. In the language of quantum consciousness, this is a direct parallel to the breakdown of coherence in a field. Blinding may also serve a practical role, shielding those who are not prepared to face the collapse or transformation of reality. By losing connection to the deeper process, they avoid full exposure to the psychological and existential dread coming from the event. When large parts of the collective field pause or break down, the path of the loop can be shaped by a much smaller group. Those who maintain their coherence, whether individuals, elites, or systems in control, can steer the outcome. If the majority of consciousness manifolds are no longer shaping the field, control passes to whoever remains active within it. There's also a role for those who remain aware and aligned with the deeper process. If enough individuals maintain coherence, they can influence the collective field slightly towards growth and transition rather than destruction. Traditions refer to this group as the remnant or the elect, and while I focus a lot on the decoherent so far, with each end naturally comes a new beginning. They hold the field steady and help guide the process into the next phase of evolution. As coherence breaks down for many, the collective field still moves forward. Consciousness and information continue to build towards the critical point, whether most are aware of it or not. Each loop follows a cycle that can't expand forever. So as consciousness grows in complexity, the field reaches that saturation point. This process creates a collapse of probability into a singularity, where all possible outcomes converge into one. In quantum terms, this is a field overload and a decoherence event. In spiritual terms, it's a moment of reset or transcendence that comes when the total field of consciousness exceeds what the system can support. It unfolds as a direct consequence of collective thought, action, alignment over time. It's consciousness entropy, if you will. The path that this closing takes depends on how individuals and groups engage with the field as it reaches its limit. If people remain fragmented, the collapse may follow destructive patterns. If enough maintain coherence, the transition can create new forms of existence and consciousness that begin the next cycle. Each person has a role in shaping this process. Coherence, awareness, and intention determine how the collective field moves through the final stage of a loop. The choice is between collapse that destroys and collapse that transforms. If any nation has mastered the science behind this system, though, it changes how power works in the world. It shifts in the direction of technology, science, and society by giving control over to the field that connects thought and reality. So as I worked through these ideas and tried to understand how consciousness, time, and reality interact, I kept seeing the same pattern. Almost all of the academic research that supported this view of reality was coming out of Russian and Chinese programs. There's also several in India, several out of the Middle East. It's concentrated throughout specific institutions that have been working on these subjects for decades. And that's when I started to connect some of the dots behind the theory and what might already be happening in the real world. Russia and China have been focused on physics that treats consciousness as an active force. Their research explores torsion fields, quantum biology, and ways of consciousness affects matter and probability. At the same time, Western science has pushed materialist view that avoids these questions or dismisses them as unscientific. This has left a gap where two very different approaches to reality are now moving in separate directions. Culturally, these countries approach to consciousness and physics as a part of a whole system. Russian cosmism sees human evolution as tied to the evolution of the universe itself. In China, research tied AI development directly to the study of emotions and consciousness, suggesting an interest in controlling both thought and feeling at the field level. Both models bring together mysticism and science in ways the West has abandoned, using ancient ideas alongside modern physics to explore how thought, matter, and energy are connected. This work has already produced a scientific and technological edge that is now beginning to show. Research on brainwave monitoring, field manipulation, and direct influence over human thought is being applied in ways that reach beyond labs and into civilian life. There have been reports of brainwave tracking in workplaces and AI tools that monitor emotional states that are part of this process. These aren't isolated experiments, but early signs of a broader system that ties consciousness into technology. The military side of this development focuses on field-based warfare. Psychotronic weapons and AI-enhanced systems aim to influence thought, emotion, and decision-making at scale. These tools work by manipulating the same fields that connect consciousness to matter, giving an edge to anyone who can steer those fields. The goal is control over probability itself, shaping which outcomes are the most likely to manifest across a population. The pattern of research and development in China points towards a shift in global power. Mastery of consciousness and field-based technologies creates direct influence over human thought and probability. Military and defense operations would focus on total control of populations and environments through consciousness manipulation. Field-based tools can direct thought, emotion, and behavior without physical force. Information and psychological influence would operate as primary methods in future conflicts, shaping outcomes before any visible action takes place. Scientific and economic power would center around those who control consciousness-based technologies. Ownership of these fields would give a monopoly over the next phase of technological growth, allowing dominance in areas that steer human development and perception. Control over the field that links thought to reality would create economic advantage across every major industry. Cultural and philosophical influence would follow. Whoever leads in these technologies would shape global narratives about reality. The ability to steer how people see existence allows control over the direction of human evolution. And this would place those cultures as the reference point for what is accepted as real or possible. And the public would experience the direct effects. Thought and emotion steering would become a part of daily life. Advances in neuroscience and AI-assisted field manipulation would enter workplaces, education, and public spaces. These tools would guide how people think, feel, and act. Without awareness or preparation, individual autonomy would dissolve into collective patterns shaped by those controlling the field. The ability to influence consciousness and probability fields shapes global power, but it also affects individuals directly. Understanding these systems makes it possible to respond with practical methods that protect against manipulation and preserve personal coherence. The first step is recognizing the types of influence that operate through these fields. These include electromagnetic attacks, acoustic signals, torsion, and quantum field manipulations, and AI-assisted psychological tools that shape thought and perception. These are not limited to governments or militaries. They can appear now in public spaces, workplaces, and homes. Physical and energetic countermeasures reduce exposure. Electromagnetic shielding materials like silver mesh and EMF tents block or weaken field influence. Faraday cages provide structured protection against electromagnetic and radio frequency attacks. High-density materials reduce acoustic signals. Biophysical coherence techniques, including breathwork and grounding, help stabilize the body's own field. And yes, this is likely where the tinfoil hat joke started, although actual shielding is going to take more planning than wrapping aluminum around your head. You won't see me here with a tinfoil hat on my head, but you might see a Faraday cage get built up behind me on the wall. Psychological and cognitive strategies reinforce internal stability. Mental resilience practices, including meditation and lucid dreaming, strengthen the ability to stay aware and in control of thought. Limiting exposure to AI-driven technology and managing sensory input reduces outside influence. Building strong communities for sharing information and emotional support creates a stable collective field that resists manipulation. One thing that you'll see as a theme throughout my videos is good or things that advance our cognitive evolution are also things that create social cohesion. So do unto others as you would have done unto you. Biological and nutritional approaches support brain function and the body's natural defenses. Antioxidants and anti-inflammatory foods protect against stress and inflammation caused by field exposure. Regular detoxification of environmental and technological pollutants help maintain clarity and physical resilience. These methods together form a practical approach for you guys to maintain coherence and awareness within a system that increasingly targets consciousness itself. Thinking about preparation naturally leads to the bigger question of why this matters at all. If consciousness and reality are tied together in a system that moves in cycles, and if we are reaching the end of one of those cycles, what we do right now carries weight. These aren't just distant theories, they describe a process that has shaped every stage of existence. And now that process is moving towards a point where something has to give once again. Time doesn't move forward endlessly, as we've discussed. Consciousness and matter evolve together inside that system, adding complexity, experience, and information. Each thought, action, and choice feeds into the field that holds reality in place. Over time, that field grows heavier, holding more than it was ever meant to hold forever. We are living in a moment where that field has reached that critical weight. The growth of consciousness, the explosion of information, and the spread of thought through technology has pushed the system to its edge. The signals of that strain are everywhere. People feel it in the sense that something is wrong but cannot explain why. Societies show it in division, breakdown, and the struggle to hold meaning together. The world itself reflects in the way that even nature seems to be shifting out of balance. That means a shift is coming, whether people are ready or not. The system can't hold this weight forever. It will reset, collapse, or move into a new form. The shape that this shift takes depends on the consciousness present at the moment of collapse. If people are coherent, aware, and aligned with the reality as it is, that shift may lead to something higher, a next phase of existence that carries the best of what we've built. heaven, if you will. If people are fragmented, distracted, and disconnected, the shift may erase what could have been saved and plunge the system into chaos before new order forms. The fallen angels. The shift down into 2D. The 3 days of darkness. And that is that for today. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I do have all of the links to the academic research in the channel bio. So all of the white papers, the research, and the science behind the crazy stuff that I said just then, that's all sourced in the channel bio. It's cited and it's all there. Thanks.